they put me on a plane to get me to Algiers, and I had, to show you what a small world this is, I had breakfast in Conakry on Friday the 13th, and had lunch in Dakar in Senegal, and dinner that evening in Geneva, went to bed that night in Paris, and was in Algiers the next morning at 10 o'clock. So when the man made these airplanes for you and me, he made them so we could get around and let our brothers know what's happening. So, brothers and sisters, I tell you that to let you know that in all of the traveling that I did in the Middle East and in Africa, everywhere I went, I found nothing but open minds. I found nothing but open hearts. And I found nothing but open doors. Our people love us. All they want to know is, do we love them? While I was traveling, I had an opportunity to speak with President Nasser when I was in Egypt. I also had an opportunity to speak with President Nyeri for 3 hours while I was in Dar es Salaam. He's a most intelligent man and alert and knows what's going on. President Nasser is too, most alert, knows what's going on. I also, when I was in Nigeria, had a chance to speak with President Osagyefo in Lagos and President Nkrumah, who stays up to date. He can tell you so much about what's happening in Harlem, you think he's out there on the corner with us. And you can quickly see why this man doesn't like him. He's hip to him, brother.
Okay. So, you're welcome to Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Park. This park was established in the year 1992 to honor the life and legacy of Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana's first Prime Minister and President. Yes, Osagyefo is a title, and it means a savior, a warrior, or a redeemer. Yeah. Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was born on 21st September 1909 at a village called Nkrofo in the western part of Ghana. His parents were Mr. Kwame Nkrumah and Madam Elizabeth Nyaneba. He had his elementary education in a Roman Catholic school in Nkrofo. Then he enrolled in the Achimota College, now Achimota Senior High School here in Accra, where he had a 4-year teacher training course. From there, he taught as a pupil teacher in the Catholic schools across the Gold Coast. So Ghana was formerly known as the Gold Coast. In 1935, he was awarded a scholarship to study at the Lincoln University in the USA, where he read economics and sociology for his first degree.
At the age of 26, Nkrumah left the Gold Coast to study at Lincoln University in the USA. He read widely from the literature of Karl Marx and Marcus Garvey. And from then on, ideals of socialism became appealing to him.
Nkrumah was very much inspired by Marcus Garvey and the whole idea of return to Africa and black freedom. That inspired him a lot too. So he knew about all those things. That would have fueled his ideas for a kind of Pan-African consciousness and the need to rally a wide range of people in pursuit of what he wanted.
In the United States of America, he came across, writings of George Padmore and Cole, who were in the Pan-African movement, W.E. Du Bois and all. And eventually in 1945, he linked up with them in Manchester, United Kingdom, where they organized the 5th Pan-African Congress. And they decided to accelerate the struggle for liberation of Africa.
As men of thought and action, they exerted great influence on the young Nkrumah. His ideas for the unity of all Africans later came to be known as Pan-Africanism. In his book, I Speak of Freedom, Nkrumah wrote, "Divided we are weak. United, Africa could become one of the greatest forces for good in the world."
He then continued to the University of Pennsylvania and over there studied philosophy for his master's. Whilst abroad, he developed interest in Pan-African politics. He later enrolled in the London School of Economics, but left after a semester to pursue his political career and Pan-Africanist ambition. in 1947, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was invited to join the United Gold Coast Convention, the UGCC, which happened to be the first and active political party to be formed here in the Gold Coast. He was made the General Secretary of the UGCC, and he, together with the other leaders of the UGCC, formed a group of people popularly known as the Big Six. And they're the people whose faces have been printed on the Ghanaian currency notes. But whilst in the UGCC, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah realized his vision and ideology didn't align with that of the UGCC, because the UGCC sought for self-government in the shortest possible time, whereas he as an individual wanted immediate self-government. So in 1949, 2 years after joining the UGCC, he left to form his own political party called the Convention's People's Party, or the CPP. And the slogan for the CPP was self-government now. After forming the CPP, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah organized a campaign. It was called the Positive Action Campaign. The campaign resulted in strikes and demonstrations, and that didn't sit well with the British administration. As a result, he, being the leader of the campaign, was arrested, sent to the James Fort prison to be detained for 3 years. But whilst in prison, the 1951 general elections, which happened to be the first ever to be held in the Gold Coast, was drawing near, and Dr. Kwame Nkrumah took a bold step of contesting whilst in prison. He was made to contest, but they didn't think he was in any way going to win the elections. But to their surprise, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah won the 1951 general elections, and they had no other option than to release him and make him the leader of government business. In 1952, he became the first Prime Minister of the Gold Coast, and on 6th March 1957, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, together with the leading members of the CPP, stood over there where the statue has been mounted to declare Ghana's independence. So this park is also known as the Old Polo Grounds, or the Old Polo Park, where the British used to play the polo game. At the time, no black or African was given access here. So Dr. Kwame Nkrumah wanted to make a statement and prove that indeed we have freedom, invited the Gold Coasters and made the Independence Declaration. So that was where he stood when he said in his speech, "At long last, the battle has ended. Ghana, your beloved country, is free forever." So on that day, the name changed from Gold Coast to Ghana, which means a warrior king. Ghana? Yeah.
Awesome. We are going to say that we create our own African personality and identity. We dedicate ourselves not only in the struggle to emancipate all the countries in Africa. Our independence is meaningless unless it is linked up with total reflection of the African continent. And let the band play our national anthem. And from now on, that national anthem is the national anthem of the Gogo, to be played on all occasions.
The mood was electrified. Everybody was seeing the dawn of a new beginning. This was the day on which he said that the African was capable of governing himself. And he said that we as Africans should be allowed to make our own mistakes. That was an incredible day.
Its freedom served as an inspiration to other African countries struggling against colonial rule, and as a result, Ghana occupied a central role in the fight against imperialists.
In December that same year, 1957, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah got married to an Egyptian woman. Her name was Fathia Rist. It was a politically arranged marriage to serve as a means of bringing all African countries together so as to push his pan-Africanist agenda. But before he got married to Fathia, he had a son in 1935 with a British Ghanaian woman called Fanny Henrietta Miller. The child's name was Professor Dr. Francis Nkrumah. He died 2 months ago at 89 years of age. With Fathia, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah had 3 children, and their names are Gamal, Samia, and Sekou. So in all, he had 4 children. 3 of them are still alive. On 1st July 1960, Ghana became a republic, and on that day, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was sworn in as the first president of the Republic of Ghana. He was a president for 6 years. In the month of February 1966, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was invited to Vietnam on a peace mission.
By declaring Ghana a one-party state, he was perceived as a dictator.
So with a one-party system, everything became all Nkrumah, and that was wrong.
But you see, that again is a total misunderstanding of African history. Almost all of the African states which broke away from the colonial yoke established one-party states.
I waited one day when it was a good mood alone. Then I said, Osagyefo, why do you want a one-party state? Then he said, you know, I've established so many industries and institutions, and I don't have enough competent people to man them. Many of the people who can do this are in the opposition. And that was why later I found the only way out was to have a one-party state. So we all belong.
The other thing which I won't necessarily say anti-Nkrumah, okay, but they say that he was too intolerant and not democratic and impatient, and they cite example that Mandela had the same fate. He went in for 27 years, came back and was hailed, but there was no way Nkrumah was going to take it lying down, and that made him too oppressive.
I totally disagree, because you see, from the 60s, in fact, as early as 1963, he started this industrialization program. And don't forget that every project that Nkrumah tackled was resisted. The motorway was resisted, and people jubilated because the motorway was truncated, because they gave the false alarm. The hydroelectric dam itself was opposed in Parliament. I remember I've forgotten the name of the person who was leading it. Every Tema Harbor, all the projects were opposed. But because of his own exposure in the United States, he knew the benefits of these projects, so that he persisted to make sure that the projects were implemented. And definitely he did cultivate some misunderstanding enemy, those people who were hoping that these programs virtually did not survive.
Could he have done more in terms of, I don't know if educating or sensitizing or letting the people know that they needed it, rather than, you don't know you need it, so just come along with me? Because it feels that the reason why everybody will oppose is that, I come in here and say, that's a pint of blood, you need it, without me telling you that you are anemic.
You see, that's what I'm saying, that it was a truncation. Don't forget that he sent virtually hundreds of people to universities outside in those days. The program had actually started in 1960, but 61, the first batch, for instance, we went for about 80-something. And these people who had been conscious and who really understood the programs, could not come back before the coup took place. And those forces against were aware that if these people came back with the right knowledge, with the explanation, etc., they would not succeed in their attempt to overthrow him. So they just made sure that the people with the right knowledge and understanding could not take power before he was overthrown.
Whilst he was away, a coup d'etat was staged here in Ghana by a group of police and military men led by Kotoka, a free-fine IGP Hali, with the indirect influence of the CIA to overthrow him. When he heard the news of his overthrow, for fear of his life, he didn't return to Ghana and went into exile in Guinea-Conakry. Over there in Guinea, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was made co-president by Ahmed Sékou Touré, who was the then Guinea president. So he was there in Guinea as a co-president for 5 years, from 1966 till October 1971, where he fell sick and was sent to Romania for treatment, where he died of prostate cancer on 27th April 1972 at the Bucharest Hospital in Romania at 63 years of age. His body was then sent to Guinea, where he was given a state burial, and that lasted for 3 months. At the time of his death, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's mother was alive. She was 100 years old at the time and blind due to old age. Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was her only child as well. So she, together with some relatives, pleaded for the body, because initially Sékou Touré didn't want to bring the body to Ghana, because if he had overthrown him, why want his body after his death? So because of his mother's pleadings, or pleased, he allowed the body to be embalmed, put in a metallic coffin, and sent to his hometown in Crawford, which is in the western region of Ghana. And over there, the body was put on public display for 20 years. Wow. When this park was built in his honor in the year 1992, his body was brought here, but they realized it was decaying and didn't look too pleasant. As a result, it was transferred into a wooden coffin to preserve the metallic one, and the body has been buried in the mausoleum, that structure over there. Yeah. Any questions? So where we are heading towards with the statue ahead of us is called the Declaration Grounds. And this was where Dr. Kwame Nkrumah stood together with the leading members of the CPP to declare Ghana's independence on 6th March 1957. The statue we are seeing was inspired by one of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's quotes or a statement he made. And what he said was, "We face neither east nor west, we face forward." In simple terms, this quote also means forward ever, backwards never. So when we look at the side of the park, we see statues. These statues are known as horn blowers. In our traditional settings, they blow the horns announce the presence of prominent people like chiefs. But in this case, their role is to announce the death of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. When we look at the far left, there's a statue playing the traditional drums. Can you see it? That represents the southern sector of Ghana. And there's another one on the far right in smoke playing something like a guitar. That represents the northern sector, and they both symbolize unity and also show Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's belief and support for cultural diversity. So we're heading to the mausoleum from here. Okay, so this structure is the mausoleum, and that's where Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and his wife Fathia have been buried. The mausoleum was designed by a Ghanaian architect called Dr. Don Arthur. He designed it like a truncated tree or a tree that has been cut short to represent the unfinished works of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. The mausoleum was also designed like the state sword that has been turned upside down. So this part we see is the handle of the sword. A sword that has been turned upside down symbolizes peace in the Akan language. So in other words, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah has been laid to rest under the tree of peace, and the black star at the top represents hope for Ghana as well as the African continent. Let's go in there. Okay, so this here is Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's third burial place. His first burial took place in Guinea-Conakry, the second his hometown, and this is his third. And over there is where his wife Fathia has been buried. Yes, the Egyptian. Fathia died in the year 2007, but before she died, she made a request to be buried beside her husband. So her body was then brought from Egypt to be buried over him. Also, the water around the mausoleum, as we know, water is life, meaning though he's dead, his legacy still lives on. Okay, so this broken statue we are seeing was once a complete statue of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and it used to be mounted at the old Parliament House, and that's the building across the park. During the 1966 coup to overthrow Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, properties including statues of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah across the country were destroyed. With this very statue, the head was removed and it was said the dictator had been taken off. One of the reasons that led to his overthrow was Dr. Kwame Nkrumah wanted to be a life president and wanted Ghana to be a one-party state. As a result, he was seen as autocratic. Also, due to his Pan-Africanist ambition, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was helping other African countries develop by giving them Ghana's resources, and that looked as though he was neglecting the needs of the Ghanaian people. So when he was sent to Vietnam, they took that opportunity and overthrew him. This part of the statue was recovered right after the coup, but the head was found in the year 2009, 43 years after the coup. It was returned by a woman on an anonymous note. She did so because after the coup, if you were caught possessing anything that represented or stood for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, it meant you were against the military regime and you served as a threat. So you could either be arrested or killed. So as a result of that fear, whilst returning the head of the statue, She didn't disclose any information about herself, not even her name. So this place is called the Freedom Wall. On the wall are portraits of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah displaying varied emotions like being angry, being indifferent or sad, smiling and laughing. They represent the stages he went through to gain Ghana's independence, and this display of emotions reveals his human nature as well. Also on the wall is his favorite quote, which says that I am not African because I was born in Africa, but because Africa was born in me. And the black star once again represents hope for Ghana as well as the African continent. This brings us to the end of our tour. Thank you very much. Emilia.
Thank you, Emilia.
You're welcome.